Do you own a business or a job? Now, as a top professional, there's no doubt that you appreciate making great income. However, like many professionals, you may have questioned at times, if I ever step off this treadmill, my income stops. In today's episode, we're going to talk specifically about how you can organize your business plan to be conducive to actually owning a business versus just owning a job. Now, the very first thing that we have to identify is, do you own a job or do you own a business? And there's some very simple ways to identify this. If you were to take your business as it stands right now and try and sell it to somebody else, transfer it to somebody else, would they be buying anything? Like, would there actually be something there if you were removed from the picture? Well, if the answer is there wouldn't be much there because it's very tied to my relationships and much of the systems are in my head, then that's not a good sign that you actually own a business. Now, you might call yourself a business owner. That might make us feel really good inside, but the reality is you own a job. Now, it's a wonderful job. It's probably the best job you could have because it's something that you're good at, something that you love. However, if you actually want to have an exit at some point, then we need to begin to pivot the way that we think and pivot the way that we act, pivot the way that we've structured our overall business. Today, we're going to talk again very specifically about your business plan. You see, I grew up in a very entrepreneurial family. My mom had a very successful business, and she would often say, I don't need a business plan. It's right here. Let's go to work. Now, the downside of that is it was right here and she couldn't transfer that to anybody. In fact, when she decided to slow down, the business stopped. Now, she knew that. She made great income all the while, invested well, and to where it wasn't a big concern. However, had she been able to go back and see, this isn't a matter of just how I performed this year. This is a matter of how transferable this asset is. She might have thought about that differently. So my question to you is, do you oftentimes say that? I don't need a business plan. It's all right here. Let's go get to work. The downside of that is what I just described. Now, the upside of that is that you're probably someone that likes to take action and you don't want to sit in analysis paralysis. And that's actually the other side of the spectrum that I want to talk about. Somebody who focuses so much on such a detailed business plan, and anytime they get a chance to go to work to execute on that plan, they'd rather spend time improving and tweaking, updating the plan. That's a form of procrastination. That's a form of fear, actually, of fearful of actually putting your plans to action to identify the true litmus test as to whether or not the plan works. So we have to be careful of both sides. Again, under planning or over planning, both of them can get us to a place where we don't want to be at. So here's what I recommend for those of you who actually want to have a business that becomes transferable while maintaining the great income levels that you've had. And it's this. It's to identify the key metrics in your business that you need to have and then be able to receive those either from your own activities and or from the activities of others. And by the way, receiving the activity report, the metrics back from other people, is a sign that you're beginning to build a transferable business. All right, so as we look at your key metrics, I want you to think of it in three major buckets. In fact, I want you to consider your business like a three-legged stool. And if you don't have a focus on these three areas, then you've got a two-legged stool or a one-legged stool, neither of which create a lot of stability. The first leg of the stool is sales and marketing. Now, this is an important one because without this, no business exists. You see, revenue, sales and marketing creates the revenue, which is the space by which a business has to operate. Okay, so if you have no sales and marketing, you have no business. Okay, so it's very important that we do this. Now, the key metrics, let's say, for example, for a real estate agent, let's start with marketing. Okay, now my guess is that when it comes to marketing your business, you probably have a number of different ways to do this, but I'm going to give an example as to how many, right? There's maybe organic, okay? And there's paid. And this is almost more advertising than it is marketing, but I'm simplifying this for the sake of our conversation today, okay? Now, when you think of your organic marketing, I want you to think of it this way. Now, you could get lost in the weeds of impressions, reach, comments, likes, shares, and sure, those are all important things to monitor, especially when we look at the paid side. However, I want to simplify this for you because if we go too detailed, if we have too many things to monitor, you'll give up and you'll go right back to keeping it all in your own head, okay? So the most important thing we need to remember is that all conversion, in other words, sales, happen and begin through conversation. So I want you to simply to ask yourself, from my organic marketing, how many conversations did that produce? With your paid marketing, if you do any sort of boosted promos, whether it be on social media, whether it be a banner in a gymnasium, whatever it is, I want you to just ask yourself, how many conversations did that lead to? Now, sometimes you can't pinpoint it because somebody comes up and talks to you and they maybe have seen your social media, maybe they've seen your banner in a gymnasium, whatever that looks like, but you have to assign each conversation to something. What do you think attributed the most to that? Okay. So in other words, every conversation that you're having, you should ask yourself, where did this come from? And it's oftentimes what they reference. If someone comes up and talks to you in the basketball gymnasium, there's a good chance that that's what caused them to actually engage with you, okay? If they're commenting about something that you posted on social media, well, there's a really good sign that that's where that's coming from. So again, all conversion happens in conversation, okay? So we have to start with that. So my invitation to you is simply monitor how many conversations you're getting from your organic and from your paid marketing, okay? That's the first part. Now let's talk about sales. Now, some might even consider this to be even more marketing, but just to simplify things, we're gonna go phone, okay? So we'll say phone calls, okay? We're gonna say appointments, and we're gonna say new contracts. Now, again, some of you might be in a spot where you're saying, you know, I don't call people, I text, I direct message, okay? I want you to not overthink this. Again, when you're engaging with somebody in a two-way conversation that uses your phone, I want you to consider that a phone call, right? I want you to, you know, if it's specifically talking about, for example, real estate. Now, if you're in insurance, it should be talking about insurance. Otherwise, it's just casual conversation, okay? But from a sales standpoint, if you're talking about your industry specifically with your phone, then I would consider that a phone call just for the sake of making this simple, okay? And you're gonna track how many of those conversations you have every day, okay? How many appointments that got you, and then how many new contracts that got you. So this then wraps up the metrics that you're identifying. It's conversations, and then from those conversations, what happens? Now, let's go ahead and move to the next, which is operations. Now let's talk about operations, which would be the second leg of the stool. Again, sales and marketing gets you the business. Operations is what you do with that business. So if you're in real estate, for example, this would be easy for you to identify how many current contracts do I have, okay? In other words, how many current people am I helping to sell a house and how many current people am I helping to buy a house, right? Contractually, okay? Not just loose, like I've got this lead and I'm sending them updates, like specifically people who have contracted with you in order to have you help them get to their end goal of buying or selling a property, okay? So the next one that I would recommend that you keep track of is your days on market. In other words, how long are your properties taking to sell versus the market days on market. Now, we're learning two things here. Number one, we're learning how long it's expected that our properties are going to take to sell, number one. And then number two, we're also rating ourselves or grading ourselves based on what's happening in the market. Are we beating the market or not? Okay, so this is one way to really track your operations. Now, when it comes to operations, you may have other metrics that you prefer to watch instead. And I'm okay with that, right? The point is, I want you to recognize that operations is your second leg of a three-legged stool. In other words, it's a third of your business. And if you're just kind of happenstance, identifying that, yeah, I've got some contracts or I don't know how many contracts I have, you're just not treating this like a real business. You're really treating it like a job. And I would even say you're not even treating it like a job. You're kind of treating it like a hobby. And so whatever those metrics are, again, don't overcomplicate. It shouldn't be more than just a couple, but know what they are and look at them every day. Now, the third leg of our three-legged stool is going to be accounting and finance, okay? Now, the important thing about accounting and finance is that this is the scoreboard for the business, right? This is really what we do all the sales and marketing and operations for, is so that we can have some money. But if we don't track the money, oftentimes we can be a very high grossing entity and a low profit entity. We see that oftentimes in real estate and many of the other industries that we support. And so as we look at the key metrics that we should be tracking, right? We need to be tracking cash collected. Like what actually closed that I can say goes into my account, okay? I also think it's important for you to identify your cash reserves and runway. In other words, if I did not, let's say, close another property, how long could my business continue to exist, okay? Now, that conversation is going to cause you to start to think about your expenses and cause you to maybe consider that maybe there's some things in there that aren't that necessary, right? We've been taught to lead with revenue. In other words, create the revenue and then decide how to spend the money. There's many things that we can do to generate business that take almost no money. But if we don't actually track what the expenses are, we'll be making money and we'll be sending it right out the other door. And of course, last but not least, the profit and loss, telling you if you made or lost money, and your balance sheet, which of course gives you perspective on your assets, your liabilities, and your equity. Now, this, again, being the third leg of the stool, I would recommend that you actually hire professionals to help you with bookkeeping. I encourage you to hire professionals to help you with your taxes. There's some things in here that aren't necessary for you to be doing on your own. And as I mentioned before, one of the most important things that you can do to transition your job into a business is, number one, start to track these metrics. And then number two, and identify other people who are responsible for these things, who will then report to you on these particular matters. So again, if in review, sales and marketing, how many conversations are they generating? That's marketing. Sales are those conversations turning into appointments and contracts? Okay, very simple. Now, operations, we're going to identify how many current clients are we taking care of and how well are we taking care of them? Their goal is to, for example, in real estate, to buy or sell property. How are we doing relative to the market? And last but not least, accounting and finance, which gives us a perspective on the health, the overall financial health of our business. And then as you can identify other people to be responsible for those things, your job will become more and more of a business, something that you can actually transfer to somebody else.